All right, we are talking paper and pen today, journaling, my everyday evening examine, evening journaling, epic exercise I've been doing for almost a decade. Let's get into it. First things first, if you haven't seen the videos that I made recently about my pen and paper notebooks that I like using, I'll leave those linked down below. But I just love a good paper notebook and some nice pens. It doesn't have to be super fancy, but just something that like glides and moves well, a nice roller ball, if you will, metal pen construction. It's good stuff. And I just love the fact that there's no distraction with it. I can just focus, I can come here, sit down at the desk and just think without anything else going on. It's funny because like the whole studio's set up right now. So like on the other side of the camera, all this is going on. But like when I'm here, it's calm, it's peaceful, it's nice. And just paper and pen make the vibe. Now I do have to admit, I have borrowed this examine, or I've been inspired to use this 5-point evening examine by Ignatius of Loyola. If any of you have been following me for any amount of time, you know that I am a Spanish mystic. That's been my spiritual journey that I've sort of been on, so the Latin mystics included. That's just been my like path thing that I'm on, but I think these 5 prompts will work for anyone, and I'll kind of explain each one as I get into them. But if you're not familiar with Ignatius of Loyola and his spiritual exercises, I think he wrote them like 700 years ago, and man, they're still good. They're still so good. I've tweaked these 5 for just like a little bit, make them applicable to modernity, but good artists copy, great artists steal. And I think that this is mostly stealing. All right, so the evening examine, 5 prompts. The first prompt is recall one is in the presence of God. This to me, I read as like the reality check. Like, am I aware of the fact that I'm not the totality of all existence, right? There's a universe, there's me, I'm a small piece of that, very small piece of that, both in space and time. And this is just a really good setup, I feel like, for thinking about anything or journaling in general. It's like where am I aligning with that? Like, where am I feeling like too burdened maybe with some things going on in my life versus like where am I feeling very like open and available because I'm not overburdened by like all the little things and all the stuff that I'm dealing with in my own life. And it's usually here that like I'll just leave this open-ended. I'll try to just ask myself like, what does it mean to like recall that I'm in the presence of God, right? Don't spend too much time on this one. There are 4 other prompts, but I think this is a great opener to just get the pen flowing, get the brain thinking, and align the thoughts and the expectations for the rest of this exercise. The next prompt, the second prompt, is thank God for blessings received. And I actually take this as gratitude, but more specifically like 2 different types of gratitude. So the first gratitude that I try to look at is like, what am I thankful for that I was able to accomplish for myself in the past that's now paying dividends here in the present? With this particular day, with this particular evening that I'm examining myself, is there something that I did in this day that future me I hope will thank me for, right? All of that stuff is like one pillar of gratitude. But on the other side, there's this pillar of gratitude for like things that are just out of your control, right? What went well today? What's going on in my life that is out of my control that I'm really grateful for, right? Like, and for me, I find like sometimes this is just like the smallest of little things, and I can sit here and be like, oh, am I grateful for anything today? Like, what have I been blessed by? And sometimes it's super small stuff. Like I ran into a couple friends yesterday. We only talked for maybe 5-10 minutes, but that really lifted my spirits and mood in a day where I just had like a bunch of going on, a bunch of chaos, and like being with them for a brief moment in this place, just in the serendipity of like running into each other, was awesome. It was like a little oasis and just like a chaotic day. And this is just a great warm-up because as we get into some of these deeper prompts, I think being honest with yourself about what's good in your life makes it easier to be honest about the stuff that is not working or is challenging, and help you get to a solution and help you envision what the good stuff looks like and transform those challenges and things that are really tough into like what they are hopefully going to become, or what you want them to become, or how you can change them into something that makes sense for your life. The third prompt here is examine how one has lived the day. This I've poured entire pages of ink out, and there are other days where it's just like 3 things. Like, what did I eat? Who did I enjoy a meal with? Sometimes just that like very basic like essential dossier, and other times it's Moby Dick. I don't know. I leave this one open. I try to leave all of these open to me to figure out like, okay, what do I need to say to myself here? Am I doing things? Am I investing my time in things that matter to me, that are building towards the vision I have for my life and the things that I want to do in my life? Am I doing things that align with the values that I have? And am I living in such a way that like I'm stoked on that? And if not, maybe this gives me an idea of like what I can change, or help me just identify everything that I'm doing in my life. Again, it doesn't have to be super specific. It can just be like little simple things about like, what am I eating? Who am I sharing my time with? What am I working on? There's a great Steve Jobs quote where he says, you can only connect the dots looking back. I really like that idea of like, if you want to build a constellation, if you want to tell your own story in the stars, you need to start putting some stars out there. You need to put the dots on the page so you can pull it all together. And I find when I go back and reflect on my journals and my notebooks over the years, you guys have seen the dozen or so right here. That's about 2,000 pages roughly of filled journaling. I love what my responses are to these prompts. It's so insightful to just see like, what was like a normal day in my life, or normal, what was I doing? What was I up to? And looking back, I can then very easily be grateful for like, what have I course corrected on? What have I doubled down on? This particular prompt just really helps me out a ton. The fourth prompt is probably the hardest prompt that I feel like I run into every single day when I do this exercise, this examine, and that is ask God for forgiveness. Now, at first, when I was younger in my like mid 20s, trying to like go through this for the first time, I was like, man, do I need to ask God for forgiveness every single day? Like every evening, will I need to ask God for forgiveness? And that was a stupid question. Yeah, they say there's no such thing as stupid questions, but that is a stupid question, because yes, obviously, like you want to be aligned with the fact that like no one is perfect. I am most certainly not perfect. I want to be comfortable and okay with the fact that I need to ask for forgiveness. Sometimes it's as simple as like, oh, I was slothful today. I didn't spend the time that I wanted to spend the way I wanted to spend it. Other times it has to do with relationships and things like, have I misrepresented my values about what I believe to other people, right? And I've found by iterating over this, what I'm asking for forgiveness for, I feel like I'm reducing and mitigating the things that like I would normally be dealing with years ago in my life, where like maybe 7-8 years ago, I'm looking at my life going like, oh, wow, I messed up big time, versus like, okay, now I can reflect on the day. I can see the trajectory of like, if I continue this pattern, where I'm going to end up. It's not where I want to be. I need to course correct and release sort of that like shame and burden of myself, and just like seek that forgiveness with God, but also forgiving myself. I find that like when you forgive God, you forgive yourself. It's really easy to forgive others. You forgive others. You find pathways to forgive yourself, forgive God. This is a great practice, a great discipline. Usually there's unforgiveness, I think, in all of our lives in one of those three dimensions, whether it's God, other people, ourselves. We typically find like we're more prone or like capable of doing one of those three and just leaning into like one of those avenues and then like tying it together and expanding out the other two, for me, has been very rewarding. It still is the hardest prompt for me in this like entire thing, but I found that like just facing this prompt every evening, or almost every evening now, it's made me a better person. And yeah, like I said, it doesn't mean that like I become perfect, but I do feel like I make progress. This is the progress prompt. Like I find every time that I come to this, the most progress is made. And yeah, hard but good. And the final prompt, this is kind of where I've sort of massaged this idea from Ignatius into something that I like, this like triune finish, this triune finality. I'm a fan of this like triune finale of sorts. Pray for resolve, reconciliation, and recommitment. I think these three different ideas of like, what do you want to see resolved in your life? What is like something that feels unresolved? I think just even identifying the unresolved stuff in your life and how you want to see it resolve can be like a really powerful, like sort of, I don't know, what do they call that in the like secular world? Or they say like manifesting. Maybe it's part of that, but I think just having that like clarity of vision of like what's unresolved in your life, allowing that to get out on the page and leave that there on the page so it's not like clouding and like cluttering up your head, having the vision of how you hope that to resolve, and then sort of releasing that resolution to be like, however that's going to resolve, this is what I want for it, this is where it's currently at, and just like being able to like let all that stuff go, it just lightens the burden for me. Reconciliation, I feel like, is something though that we don't talk enough about, and I think putting this into the prompt for me has been really interesting, because I now think like, where do I need to reconcile with other people? What kind of action am I responsible for in those relationships? And I find a lot of times this is like if I'm feeling uncertain or like anxious about something, like that like reconciliation question is like, oh, I need to like, who do I need to go reconcile with? Who do I want to then reconcile with me? And like, what can I do to facilitate that happening? I just think those are the kinds of questions that'll get you thinking about like, how can I facilitate reconciliation in my life? It's actually pretty cool when you have reconciliation, whether it's very small things with friends, or bigger things with like family members, and being able to like break down walls that have been up for years, decades, having that openness and that like availability, that constant, just like, this is what I want to see reconciled in my life. It's helpful. It really is. And that last part, recommitment, I find a lot of times for me, it's like, what do I need to recommit to? Is it one of my values? Is it one of the things that I care about that for some reason I've like let lapse or I'm not doing? I've been spending a ton of time in the last few weeks just really like reflecting on my prayer life. And like what it actually means to pray. I'm giving a whole talk on prayer next week. Having to give this talk on prayer later this coming week has like made me think about like, what does my own prayer discipline look like? Why do I still do it? What do I want out of it? What does all that mean? And like, that's a recommitment of a value that I have, which is like, I want to be able to pray. I want to be able to orate, in Spanish, oración, prayers. I want to be a great speaker, right? Not just speaking to God, not just speaking to myself, but speaking to others. I want my words to mean something, especially delivering them to you here in these videos. I want to be a well-spoken person that when people hear my words, they feel like a very positive conviction. They feel some peace, hopefully, as well. And I was just like exploring like, what else can I put into my words that gives something positive and of value to other people, and just like getting into that dynamic, right? And figuring out like, what's the recommitment that I need to have to give that to others. So that's it. Those are the 5 prompts, my evening exam and the Ignatian examen, but tweaked for me. That is what I put myself through every single evening, or I try to every single evening. Just think about those things. Let me know down in the comments below if you try this, or if you take any one of these 5 prompts and incorporate them into your particular journaling exercise. I'm a strong believer in the fact that the quality of your questions will determine the quality of your life. I don't know who said that. If someone knows who said that, like leave it down in the comments below. It's not mine, but I'm so about that. I'm so about that. I think having better questions just can improve your life in so many ways, but you got to come back to them. You got to reflect on them. So I hope this video was helpful to you in some way or another. A little bit different. Normally we're here doing tech and photography stuff, but I'm loving sort of like the journal, the analog paper. Probably do a little bit more of those videos as well. So subscribe to this channel if you have yet to, and I'm honored and so grateful to all of you who already have. Thank you so much. Be kind, both in life and in the comments below, and like this video to send good vibes across the internet. And we'll do it again soon. Later.